All right, perfect. So, welcome everyone again. I know you've missed me probably after a few days of not being on here, but you know what? I'm just going to keep showing up and talking. So, um, hey, let's get right into it. I've got a special guest joining me again today. Her name is Brianna Zanoni. And let me give you a proper introduction on Brianna. She is honestly a phenomenal person. I've gotten a chance to know her for several months now as she's been educating me along my own personal financial journey. And she comes from the financial industry. She's been in here for a decade plus. She was originally working in the banking industry, but then, she found the light and moved over into this line of work after she found that she was able to touch and improve the lives of people more effectively by helping them become financially free. And she's at her core, she's an educator. Like I said, she's been educating me, which is why I want to bring her in. She breaks down rather difficult concepts into something that's more digestible and conceptually understandable for the majority of us people. And most importantly, she's a mom. She's got 4 kids. I know I've gotten to see a few of them, knowing that I've got one myself. She's got them ranging from 7 to like 8 months old. I don't know how the hell she does it, but honestly an awesome person. So I'm so excited to be bringing her to meet with us all today. So, Brianna, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thanks so much for that amazing introduction, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well,
Uh,
hey, so I'm glad we could get started here. And I just need to shut off one of my things because it was providing feedback on my end. But listen, the reason I wanted to pull you in, I'm focused on helping people better understand how to be smarter financially. And on a quick little story about myself, I started at P&G many moons ago. I've got gray in the hair here, and for like a decade plus, I was maxing out my 401k. I wasn't just putting in the minimum amount to get the employer contribution. No, I was maxing the hell out of that, and I thought I was doing a smart thing. Because at that point in time, I was young, single, making good money in the corporate world, and it wasn't in decided to educate myself. Like I started reading like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that led me down a rabbit hole of all other things that I should understand a little bit more about personal finances. That I recognized that I was making a big mistake. And because I'm still kind of greener in this area of really how big of a mistake, and you have a decade plus of experience with this, I was hoping I could kind of grill you today. I'm going to act like I'm basically all of the companies that sell 401ks and tell you why it's the wrong thing for us not to be utilizing a 401k. So hopefully that's okay with you. Because yes,
yeah,
I think this could be a really beneficial conversation for everybody involved.
yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. Sounds great, Dan.
Awesome. So, if you could, I know you said you had some additional like kind of a quiz you wanted to test me on of how well I know a 401k, or kind of give me a dialogue of it. We want to keep it as engaging as possible for people. So please let me know where you want to get started.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I've got over a decade experience in this. I meet with a lot of people who do have a 401k, have contributed a lot of money to it. And when I sit down with clients and they say, "Oh, I've got a 401k," I'm like, "Great, you're saving some money, you're putting some money aside. That is phenomenal." There's a lot of people who aren't looking towards the future. They aren't planning on saving anything. They really have no plan at all to be able to stop working. So
Yeah.
the fact that people are doing something is a great start. Like that is phenomenal. But when I sit down with a lot of my clients, I'll ask them, I'd like you to rate yourself 1 to 10 on how well you know the 401k. Like 1 meaning you really just know it's called a 401k, it's supposed to be for retirement, that's really it. A 10 meaning like you know the 401k inside and out, you could teach a class on it.
Yeah.
And where would you guess most of my clients would rate themselves from a 1 to a 10 when I sit down with them?
Yeah. If I add this on so people can actually see, oh, I'm trying to add your little deck here. I would say the majority of people would be probably in the 2 range.
You're you're
Um,
absolutely right. You're
eh,
absolutely right. I get like a 1 to a 3 for most people on how well
okay.
they know it.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
candidly, I'd say, oh gosh, back in my days where I thought I was brilliant maxing out the 401k, I thought I was hot stuff. Turns out I was probably a 1 or a 2. now I feel like I'm a lot well versed, but still, it's something that, um, yeah, I wish I was a little bit better on.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people do. We're told by our coworkers, by our HR department, by our company, like, oh, hey, you've got this benefit. You don't want to miss out on this benefit that you have. And so absolutely. And so really, why do people have a 401k? And it's because there's a couple of benefits that we get from having it. So
Yeah.
that first one, free money. I am all about free money. Usually it's a ratio, a dollar to dollar or a percentage
Yep.
that people are getting this free money that's a benefit to them. So that's one of the reasons why people have a 401k.
Yep.
Another one is for tax savings. You're going to save money on taxes now. Sounds super great. 2 to 10% that I don't have to pay now? Like absolutely.
Yep.
That's a great deal. Yes, why wouldn't I? The next one's retirement. Oh, if you have a 401k, you're going to be able to retire at 65. This is something that I hear very often. And then lastly, one of the other main reasons is because taxes are going to be lower in retirement. These are some of the common things that I hear on why somebody has a 401k. But in reality, when we look at the 401k is made up of mutual funds. So it's in variable accounts, stocks, things that are going to go up and down with the market.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, when we look up the word variable, it means unreliable, untrustworthy, where we don't really know what's going to happen to it. And so if I had an unreliable car, I'd probably want to get a new one. When
Yeah.
we think of the word unreliable for our retirement accounts, like that's not really a good word to associate with that. So
Certainly.
that's just right. So that's kind of in its core. But there's two main rules to the 401k. There's the 59 and a half rule, and then there's
Yeah.
the 73 RMD rule. And so I want to really go over these because these are two of the things that people are like, oh, I know the 59 and a half rule. I understand that. But let's like really get into it and what exactly that means for ourselves and our money in our future.
Yeah.
So so first off, 59 and a half rule. What this means is that if we take money out of our 401k before 59 and a half, we're going to be penalized 10%. And then we're also going to have to pay taxes on that. Right now, taxes are about 30%. Sometimes we have federal and state taxes as well. It can be much higher than that, but it's about a 40% for most people.
Okay.
So, right off the bat, if we need money out of our 401k before we're 15 and a half, we have an emergency, our kid is in the hospital, something happens, we need a new car, whatever that might be, we are going to be penalized and then also taxed on that money. But
Wow.
do you have a question?
Yeah, so I was just quickly thinking, like, so $100,000, let's just say for simple math, if I want to take $100,000 out, which is kind of rightfully mine because I was allocating money towards it for all those years. If I want to take it out before that, I'm going to see 40% of it just immediately vanish. So I'm down to 60,000.
You are. There are very few situations where you can pull it out without that penalty.
Yeah.
But honestly, with the parameters around those are so strict that sure, yes, you could, but those are very few and far between to be
Yeah.
able to actually get that without it. And then you're still being taxed on top of it anyways. So
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So could you take a guess at what percentage of people pull money out of their 401k before 59 and a half?
I mean, I would assume not a lot because everybody knows about, well, you have to wait till retirement age. Like, that's been pounded into our head. And on top of that, if you are going to face this penalty, I would assume maybe 20% at most.
Hmm. That's a pretty good guess. It's actually a pretty low guess because it's actually over 80% of
Holy
people
shit.
pull money. I know. I know. When I heard this, I was like, what? There's no way. But people, especially, I mean, think of COVID. So many people are out of jobs. That was their savings. That was all that they had. And they
Yeah.
had to pull money out because people are losing jobs. This was even actually before COVID, these numbers. It's actually increased. I think it's actually at 92% now of
Oh, wow.
people are pulling at it's insane. But you know what? The government loves this. They love it because they're getting to pull the taxes and the penalty from people who didn't have any other plan. They just had the 401k. And so the
Wow.
IRS, the government is getting that money sooner and they love it. So this unfortunately is what happens when we have a plan that is very constrictive on how we can use it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, there's the 59 and a half rule. what if, we had other income coming in? We had maybe real estate, maybe some royalties, maybe we had other money coming in, and we're like, I don't want to pull money from my 401k. It's grown. I want to let it grow some more. Then we get to this 73 RMD, and RMD stands for required minimum distribution. Now, this used to, up until last year, this used to be age 72. It got moved to age 73. But what this says is if we do not take a required minimum distribution by age 73, we're going to have a penalty up
Okay.
until, and so right now, this RMD, this is a 25% penalty. If we do not take our required minimum distribution, we're going to be penalized 25%.
Sure.
Up until last year, it was actually 50%. Now, what this tells me is that since they're reducing the penalty, unfortunately, when we think about it, when we think about taxes, in the future, do you think taxes are going to stay the same, go down, or go up?
Well, I mean, the amount of government debt we have is it's scary, and it's only going to get worse. And so I can't imagine a life where taxes are actually going to be coming lower.
Right, exactly. And so taxes in the future are at an unknown tax rate. We're not sure. But by them reducing this penalty, what it tells us is it means our taxes are pretty much guaranteed to be going up,
Yeah.
if not going up astronomically,
Hmm.
because of reducing that penalty. And
Yeah.
so if taxes stay the same, if taxes were only 30%, we're looking at 55% of our money gone just because we weren't ready to retire yet. Maybe we took a loss in the market. We wanted to let that money grow some more before we took some. And sorry, you don't get to. We're going to be penalizing you, and you still are going to have to pay taxes on that money. So
Yeah.
those are two big rules around the 401k, that 59 and a half and that 73 required minimum distribution. But what happens if we're right at retirement age? We're 65. We want to start pulling money out of that account. Taxes in the future, like we just said, taxes are probably going to be going up. So instead of paying taxes at a lower, which actually historically we're at an 80-year low on tax rates. I know people are always saying, oh my goodness, taxes are so much, we're paying so much in taxes. Historically, we're at an 80-year low in our taxes. Even especially with there was the 2017 um, Tax Cut and Jobs Act, where
Yeah.
they actually reduced our taxes even more. And if the government does nothing by 2025, our taxes will increase because that will be the time frame of that act that was put into place. So
Yeah.
the government doesn't have to do anything, and taxes will be going up in 2025. And so, unfortunately, this is what most people's whole financial plan is. Like, I've
Yeah.
got my 401k, it's going to be great. I'm getting free money now. I'm saving for retirement. My taxes are going to be less in the future. But when we look at that as well, right now, a lot of people are parents. We're able to
Yeah.
write our kids off. We're getting a tax deduction there. We're owning a home. We're able to deduct part of that mortgage on our taxes. There are tax savings that we have now that we actually get to keep that we won't get to have in the future. And so taxes are actually going to be more in the future, even if they didn't even raise taxes, just because we're not getting those deductions that we're currently relying on now. And don't you think we'd want the most tax savings in the future when we're no longer creating an income versus now when we can work more? Our body can actually handle the
Yeah.
stress of working more and can physically do that versus in the future when we want to enjoy retirement, right?
Yeah. There's so many things that are going through my head right now.
Yeah.
I think, a few things. One, I think you know this, but a lot of people may not know this. I spend a lot of time working with real estate investors because that's where I spend a lot of my life now. And nearly all of the real estate investors, the times when they don't want to invest is because they consider a real estate investment too illiquid. And most of my real estate investments are only 3 to 5 years. So for my investors, who are nearly all accredited investors, to consider a real estate investment too illiquid. Now this makes a lot of sense when I see that 80% on the screen there of people accessing their retirement accounts before the allowable age of 59 and a half, which then suggests to me that I really need to find an alternative vehicle, not just for myself, but hopefully for other investors, that allows them to have more liquidity, probably have
Mm-hmm.
less risk, and hopefully more return. I know that's the holy grail. If we can hit all three of those things, fantastic.
Right.
But at least providing more liquidity and probably more protection for my investors will make them more financially sound.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And honestly, that is what we do because there's the common things that people invest in, 401ks,
Yeah,
IRAs, Roth IRAs. And for the Roth IRAs where we're not having to pay those taxes, there is an income limit. If you make too much money, you can't put money in them.
yeah,
And so there are definitely different tools and resources out there that the wealthy are using that they've utilized, they've leveraged their time and their money to find these tools
yeah,
that we actually teach our clients about specific to those clients' needs because not everyone's in the same place financially currently and not everyone has the same financial destination that they're working towards. And so being able to see, okay, here's all of the different resources that we have, what's that best fit? And
yeah,
for a lot of people, unfortunately, the 401k isn't always the best fit to help them reach their financial goals, especially with the fact that they can lose money in the market and they are going to be taxed on it. Like, we don't pay taxes right now on that 401k. We are absolutely having to pay taxes in the future on it. And
yeah,
taxes are going to be going up. I mean, we're over $30 trillion in debt, and that's on the rise. You can look at it historically. Like, we're having that, and then not even that, even Social Security, it's set to run out of money, I think, by 2034. And so, how do they get more money for that? They're
yeah.
going to be raising taxes. So, yeah, it's not a good situation that people don't really realize that they're putting themselves in.
Yeah.
And I
So
mean, that's
I guess how did a 401k come about then? Because I see, I know there used to be private pension plans and companies used to really promote that. And I think GE and Procter and Gamble, where I came from, really prided themselves on that. I know in
yeah,
my working years that has been a pipe dream to ever have something like that. So how did this all come about?
absolutely. That's a great question. So back in 1978, taxes, when we look at taxes, now the wealthy, again, they leverage that the money that they have, they leverage that to find the people who can find the answers for them.
Sure.
And ultimately, in 1978, taxes, we can see tax year 1978, they had to file in 1979. We can see that the wealthy were paying 70% in taxes. I
Wow.
can tell you that they did not want to pay 70% in taxes. And they knew that taxes had to be coming down. So they were like, what if there was a way that we could defer paying taxes? What if we could pay taxes at a later date? And thus, in 1978 is when the 401k was invented. And
Huh.
so through that, these companies were able to say, okay, instead of us paying you now and you being taxed at 70%, we'll delay paying you and then you'll just pay taxes at that point. And you can look up the rates of how much people were able to put in. They were able to put in a ton more money inside of their 401k because it was created for the wealthy.
Yeah.
And then companies realized, hey, instead of us providing pension plans, instead of us paying, somebody gives 40 years of their life, they were loyal to us, instead of us having that loyal employee and then paying them for the rest of their life when they retire, we can have this contribution plan where people can put their own money. We can also put money in there as a benefit and use that as a tax write off for the business, and then they can fund their own retirements instead of us having to pay their entire retirement. And so
Yeah.
companies really liked that idea, which is unfortunate for any employee who has that 401k because they don't have that guaranteed income for the rest of their lives now. They have to provide it on their own. And most people, if we look up how much is inside the average 401k, how much in average 401k, we're looking at age 65, people getting right about ready to retire, the average 401k only has $279,000 in there.
Oh,
If
wow.
someone's used to paying just $50,000, that's 5 years. Let's say they
Yeah.
earned a little bit, maybe that's 6 years of retirement. This is why we see so many people having to go back to work in their 70s. You think those older, elderly Walmart greeters want to be there? No, they have to be there. They have to supplement their income somehow. So
Dear
it's
God.
it's crazy how underfunded. Like, if these were really truly for retirement, like, there would be so much more in them. And this
Yeah.
is the average. The median out of everyone who has a 401k, the very middle person who's age 65 only has $87,000. That
Man.
means this program is failing for sure half of all Americans, but really much more than just half to be able to fund their retirements. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I mean, hell, if I think about it, let's say I hit 65 and I now want to live off of that. Yes, I might be receiving some social security benefits, but I mean, candidly, for us, for maybe probably anybody under 45 or 50, social security may not be around, for being real.
Yeah,
But let's assume you're still getting that social security benefit and I'm at 65 now. If I'm supplementing that, if I say on the, let's give the benefit of the average 401k, not the median, even though that's the majority of Americans.
mhm.
The 4% rule, what is that? 4% on 280 is, oh, I don't know. Is that like $12,000 or something like that? Yeah, thank God you have a calculator.
Yeah, times what did we say, 4%? So we're
Yeah.
looking at 11,000
Okay.
that we're still gonna have to pay taxes on. Like,
Oh gosh, yeah, a whopping 10% at least on that one since it's so low. But okay, so you're really taking home 10,000 and whatever Social Security is. I don't know a place anywhere in the United States now that I could actually live off of that.
exactly. And
Okay.
that's like the sad reality of the fact that most people aren't able to retire. They're not. They're having to continue working.
Wow. Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
that's upsetting. Might be one word. But I mean, at least again for you and I, we're not close to retirement age, or
right.
how deemed per the government retirement age. I'd love to retire now, but yeah, I guess there has to be a solution then, right, for people longer term.
Absolutely. And there are so many solutions that are out there. Most people have never sat down with a financial professional who can actually see, okay, here's where you are now. Here's where you want to be, depending on your goals. If you have kids, do you want
Yeah,
to send them to college? What are the goals that you have in your life? Let's put a plan in place to make sure that you reach those goals within your time frame. And most people, unfortunately, are just relying on their 401k because that's what their parents told them to do. That's what
yeah,
their coworkers are telling them to do. But really, when we look at it, we want to be getting help from people who are already in the position that we want to be in. And
hmm
that's why it's so important to be working with a financial professional that A can figure out what's going on in your life, determine what your financial needs are for the future, and be able to show you exactly how to do that because that's what we do all day long.
yeah,
That's what we're able to by the tools that are available that honestly most companies won't even talk to you about because a lot of them are very low profit products for the companies and very high profit products for the clients.
yeah,
So they're not even talking about them unless really you mention them by name and you know exactly what you're looking for because they don't make any money off of it. And
yeah,
financial institutions, they want to make money off of you. Banks, like I used to work in banking and I realized very quickly through that that banks are a business and their inventory is money. So
yeah,
the more money you have, the more money they can then make. And I was not okay with the practices that they were using. And I was like, okay, I have to find something else. I cannot get behind this
hmm
because it wasn't for the clients. It wasn't really helping them to reach their financial goals. And so that's why I'm so thankful I found this because we've been able to help so many families take the money that they were already putting aside. They were already putting it towards savings without costing them anything to be able to show them the better tools and resources that they can use for their specific situation. There's no one size fits all. Oh,
yeah,
everybody has to have this plan. And like if you ever hear somebody saying, "Oh, everyone has to have this," they don't really know what they're talking about because not everybody has to have this one specific plan because your goals may be different. It's like if you have a GPS, if you're trying to drive somewhere, you
hmm
have to know two things: where you are now and where you want to be, right?
hmm yep,
If I try to give you directions to the store based off of how I get to the store from my house, you're probably not going to end up at the store,
yep,
right? Because I
yep,
take different directions than you would take. But that's what most people are just like, oh, everyone has to have this one thing and everyone's good. No, there's probably something different for your situation. There's probably a way to structure something that's going to be better for you to reach your goals. And so that's what we help people do.
Wow. I mean, first off, this is extremely helpful. I guess, what other things do you have there? I know you kind of had an idea of a deck that you wanted to share. What other, nuggets could I pull from you here? So I've learned a few things here that I'll recite. One, the 401k was created back in the 70s, and is really designed to help the rich who were getting a 70% tax bracket delay paying taxes on their earned income. And based on the amount of money that was allowed to be put in at that point in time, which was like 50,000 or whatever it might be, it was definitely not designed for the ordinary human. It was at some point in time in later history that it morphed into being the retirement plan of choice for employers to offer to their employees. And now it's just been kind of, as our parents always tell us, like if somebody else is doing it, or you're going to do it too, but yet we are doing that with a 401k. Um, and then I think you hit on the tax parts of you're going to face ordinary income taxes. Um,
Yeah.
what other things am I missing?
Yeah, I feel like really the big thing is really sitting down with someone and figuring out, okay, here's what's going on currently with my finances. And based off of these, like, what do I really want out of life? I feel like a lot of people aren't living in the home that they would want to be living in for the rest of their lives. They're not living the lifestyle that's what they really want. And so really figuring out, like most people have given up on their dreams of the things that they want in life because they've limited their dreams down to their income that they're getting from their job. And
Mm-hmm.
that's their lot in life, and that's what they're going to do, or they're living for the weekend. And so we really help people really to figure out, okay, what are those dreams that I used to have that I maybe no longer have anymore, or have always been there, but it's like, oh, if I win the lottery, then I'll be able to. And for most people, you're never going to win the lottery.
Yeah.
And so really those are probably really my biggest things of really getting with somebody to figure out. And it can be daunting, which is why I love what we do, is because we take a very educational approach to it. We're
Yeah.
never going to tell someone, how dare you do this, or you have to do this. Like, hey, here's what you're doing now. Here's how it works.
Yeah.
Here's something that I would suggest that would help you reach your goals. Here's how it works. You now have the facts to make a decision on if you want to change something or do something different.
Yeah.
And each person's situation is different. Like I helped recently a client save over $600,000 just by making a tweak with what he was doing with his finances,
Hmm.
because he wanted to be a debt-free homeowner. He wanted to make sure that his family was taken care of. And so finding those, okay, here's what you want to do. How can we get there faster? Can we save you more money? How can we put more money back in your pocket? And really determining what those things are. I mean, we could get into, okay, here's the entire history of the 401k, and here's exactly how it works, and here's, not even to these, like this isn't even going over the fees. Most people have 12 to 17 different fees that are coming out of their account, which is about 1 to 3%,
Yeah.
whether your account has earned money or lost money, that you're having to pay for somebody to manage your 401k that maybe they lost you money in.
Hmm.
Like, how can we minimize? How can we take those out? How can we make sure that your money is working harder for you than you have to work for it, and is able to sustain you for the rest of your life moving forward once you're ready to retire and you hit that, I need this amount of money to retire. Okay, you can hit this by this age by doing XYZ. And like
Yep.
you have that exact roadmap of what you need to be doing. So I mean, we could hash this to death and go into all the nitty gritty. And some people who have that engineer type mindset, that analytical, like, okay, how exactly does this work? And I'm more than happy to go through it. But
Yeah.
this is just kind of that high level overview, how it was invented, how it works, what we can look forward to in the future, and what we need to plan for to make sure that we don't get to 65 and think, oh, I have $1 million, I get to keep that $1 million in retirement. Well, no, we're going to be taxed on that. It's not about how much money we have; it's how much we get to keep.
Yep.
That's the big that's most important.
Y- You know,
So
that actually just kind of sparked something because I remember when you were educating me on this. I think you showed me like a money chimp calculator or something like that. And
yep,
because I was saying, well, hey, I'm getting a employer match on my 401k, and that employer match, that alone is similar to, one of the reasons you highlighted originally of why people do a 401k. That alone is why I should be doing this. But then I
yeah,
think you had a explanation Oh, and I see you're pulling that up, so let me put that on the screen so people can see it.
Oh yeah.
Let me, sorry, need to restructure this.
So
And
that's a great point that you're going across, Dan. So most people, when they think of, oh, getting that free money, like if I'm doing something else aside from my 401k, like I'm missing out on that free money that my
yeah,
company was going to give me, like I'm missing out on that benefit. But if it was really a benefit, they would just give it to me. I wouldn't have to do something for them to then give it to me.
sure.
So if we look at the 401k, if we say, okay, if I'm making $100,000, just for easy math, if I'm making $100,000 and my company is going to match me up to 6%. So 6% of 100,000 is 6,000. So let's say yearly I'm putting in $6,000 to get the match and they're matching me $6,000. Let's say I'm 35 and we've got
Yep,
30 years to retirement. So we want to retire at 65.
yep,
What's going to happen is this money is going to be invested. Again, things like stocks that are going to get, and this is a whole different subject, but going versus average versus actual.
yep,
A lot of companies like S&P 500 is a very common
yeah,
um, index fund that people will invest into, and they'll say, oh, the S&P 500 is averaging 10%, it's averaging 12%, 8%, whatever. What it's averaging is not what it's actually doing.
mm,
And what it's actually doing, and this has actually changed as of this past year, but I'll still run it at this higher. So it was doing, when it's actually all said and done, what you were actually getting was a compounded rate of 5.2%. This has actually decreased since then. I think it's like it's
damn,
4.68, I think. But we'll just say that it's getting 5.2, which is like, oh my goodness, this is being amazing. This is over and above, like this is best case scenario.
wow,
So if we're just putting this in, we're setting this aside for retirement, we're going to look at having over
yeah,
$800,000 in retirement, which sounds like great. Oh my goodness, $800,000. We're almost at a million just from putting in my amount and getting that match through my
yeah,
company. But what happens is when we get ready to retire, we can't be as risky. We have to be more conservative with that, with how with how our money is growing. And so
mm-hmm,
we're generally only going to be getting about a 2% rate of return.
yeah,
We're going to be much more conservative. And so let's just say we want to live for the next 20 years. Like obviously, I hope I live much longer, but if we're retiring at 65,
yep,
we plan on dying by 85. Like this is kind of looking at, best case scenario, what we're looking at.
yeah,
Taxes are at just 25%. We're going to calculate it and we can see if we're used to, again, we're used to making $100,000. When we go to retire, if we're going to just be living, if we want this to last that total of 20 years, we can only pull out $52,000 a year, but we're going to be taxed on it. So we're really only living off of 39,000. That's
wow,
all we have. So what a decrease. And this is the problem that most people have. Most people work 40 years of their life only to retire on 40% of their income. And that's matching up with the numbers there. 40%, they were making 100,000. They're not making that anymore in retirement. And I don't want
that's
that for
terrible.
people. So one of the ways that we can do that is by helping them get a higher rate of return. And there's a bunch of different products that offer this. I mean, again, it just depends on the situation of somebody. But the problem with it is that you're not getting that employer match anymore, which
Yep,
is for a lot of people a big problem. Oh my goodness, I'm losing out on that match. I'm not going to I'm not going to be where I was. So just remembering, we're 35, we've got 30 years till retirement. We started at 860,000. So that's if we were going to do it with the 401k, best case scenario, everything's going right. This is what we'd have. Since we're doing a different product, this actually has guarantees. We're looking at an 8.2%. Now, this is being extremely conservative. We have
okay,
accounts that are doing more than this, but this is being extremely conservative on how much we're earning interest in these.
got it,
Um, so we were at 868,000. If we calculate this, oh man, we didn't have that match. We don't have as much money now, which sounds like, oh my goodness, like this isn't that great. I don't have as much money. It's not going to last as long.
sure,
But the beauty of this is that since we don't have to, our money is not at any market loss. We cannot lose our money. We
okay,
actually
so it
get
can
to
only
sit.
go up, it can never go down.
Exactly. So
Got it,
it can never go down. You are guaranteed to have your money. Your money is just going to continually grow.
yep,
I like to equate it as investing in, like, have you ever been in an elevator?
yes,
Right, absolutely. So if you have a building that's 100 stories and you go into an elevator, If you push 100, you know that eventually you're going to get to the 100th floor,
Yep.
right? Because the elevator is working on an upward trajectory.
Yep.
Versus when we invest our money, and that's how these accounts work, it is going to keep going up. You may have to stop at a couple of floors. You may have to stop at a lot of floors, but your money, it's going to continually going up.
Yep.
Versus when we invest in like the stocks where it's going to go up and down with the market,
Mm.
it's like jumping into an elevator that's going to erratically go to floor 20 and then floor 5 and then floor 18 and then 23, and like it's all over the place, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm ever going to get there. And if you search like how when would you reach the 100th floor, it says you're never going to get there.
Sure.
You're never going to reach that if you're in an elevator like that. But that's how most people are investing their money. And so we completely eliminate all of those losses. We have that elevator like guarantees where you may have to stop at a floor, but it's going to keep going up as
Yeah.
time goes on. So let's say again, we only want 20 years just so that it's apples to apples
Yeah.
of the same time frame. But the beauty in this is A, we're getting guarantees in our money, it's only going up, but we also don't have to pay taxes on that. So instead of having to pay 25% in taxes, we don't have to pay taxes. So even though we have less money, we're able to sustain that higher rate of return. And again, this is being very conservative.
Yeah.
So instead of $39,000 in retirement per year that we could take out, we can now take out we can take out $72,000
Wow.
completely tax free.
So almost 2x more. And and so a few thoughts here, because this is crazy. Um, First is that's $72,000 or $73,000 a year. Is
Mm-hmm.
that able to be like just continue to be recycled? Like, am I ever at risk of running out of that principal balance being in there or not?
So that's a great question. So there's different ways to structure these accounts. There's ways that we can pull out much more than this. There's way we can pull out less. The way that we structure them is to be able to consistently just live off of the interest.
Okay.
So you're never touching that nest egg. So this calculator is a great just it's a tool to just show you what it looks like. It's not exactly what it would look like because
Yeah.
honestly we're getting better interest rates. I like to show people how they can live off of 8% of the growth. We get them to where they can consistently live off of the
Yeah.
interest, never touch their nest egg, be able to pass that on for generational wealth, completely change their family's lives for forever, to completely change their last name forever when it comes to money and how they're able to help their next generation
And,
move forward in life with so
and
many
so the
more
tax
resources.
rate part then, so this is pretty much like a Roth then that we're talking about, or how different is this then from a Roth? Since I know a Roth, we pay the taxes now, which I agree on always paying the taxes first because we never know what taxes are going to be. But is this pretty much a Roth here, or something a little bit different? Because I know a Roth has that variability of that elevator analogy you were talking about.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is definitely structured like a Roth in the fact that you don't have to pay taxes on the back end. So it's no taxes on the end. However, it does have those guarantees. So this is known also as the rich man's Roth because
Mm,
again, people who are making too much money, they can't have a Roth IRA, but it has those guarantees in place, which it's on the paper. Like it says guaranteed no less than 0%. And there's
yeah,
different ones that have a small amount that it's never just zero. It's a percentage that you're always at least guaranteed to get. Again,
yeah,
it just depends on the family's needs and what their future goals are. But these can be structured in so many different ways to guarantee that they're never going to lose their money. Their money's only going up. They're able to reach their financial goals so much faster because they're not reliant on a market that's going to go up and down. Because when we look at it, again, those that average versus actual, when our
yeah,
money goes down, that whole amount goes down. And so if you have, let's say you had $100 invested in something and the market went up 50%, great, it went down 50%. Okay, you 50-50, that's zero. So the financial companies, I feel like this is the biggest lie that finance companies will say, oh, lose money. Actually look at it, if you had $100, it went up 50%, you now have 150. If that $150 went down 50%, you now only have $75. So in actuality, your account lost 25%, not that 0% that finance companies can legally tell you your account averaged. So this just works to just show you how much your money can grow much faster because you're never having to claw your way back up to even because your
yeah.
money is guaranteed to never lose anything. So
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, this has been incredibly helpful. And so I now understand. All right, it's kind of like a Roth, but it's a rich man's Roth. If it's a rich man's Roth, does that mean only rich people should be getting into this, or what do you think is really the real threshold in order to qualify to get into something like this?
Yeah, I mean, these accounts, like honestly, I've got 4 kids. I've started these accounts for my children, like $100 is really all you need to start.
Wow.
Now, I would recommend, setting aside more, especially as we get older. The biggest benefit that we have as far as money goes, it's not even the dollar amount, it's time.
Yeah.
How much time do we have to let that money compound and grow? My children, since they're so young, they have so much more time. We can start with so much smaller amounts
Yeah.
and they're going to be millionaires.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we do need to be putting money inside of there. I mean, you definitely can still start at $100. I would hope that somebody could set aside more than $100 a
Yep.
month to be able to utilize this really to the fullest benefit. But I mean, really, we can start with $100. Again, I would do much more. Like someone in their 30s should be doing about $500. I know
Yeah.
for some people that's a lot. Some people are like, oh, that's nothing. So it really just depends on what your financial goals are. If you're
Wow.
somebody who only wants, $50,000 a year in retirement, like you're going to be looking at much less versus someone who wants $500,000 a year in retirement, you know?
This is crazy. um, but no, I mean, hey, I don't want to eat up more of your time. I know we ran way over here, and I know you've got other people to meet with, so I don't want to keep chewing that up. But thank you so much for it. I guess if there was like one final takeaway that you think would be most important for people to understand in regards to a 401k, what would that be?
Oh man, I feel like the one takeaway I would have to say is your 401k is, if you look in the paperwork, you have to look a little bit to find it, but it says FBO. It says for benefit of, and it will have your name. It doesn't say you're the owner because you're not. You're
Hmm.
not the owner of your 401k. So knowing, and so the governments in other countries have actually pilfered different employees' 401ks similar to their whatever that country was offering, have taken money from it to fund their own retirement plans for the community for the less fortunate.
Wow.
So I mean, could you imagine? Which I mean, you could just search it, you find it online, but other countries have done this. Could you imagine saving $1 million, $2 million, and the government says, "Oh, you saved too much money. We're going to take some of that and give it to the people who didn't plan ahead, who didn't save anything." Like, oh my goodness, I planned ahead. How dare you take my money? But
Yeah.
it really wasn't our money because we said, "Hey, I'll get paid later." That's a tax code, Section 401k.
Yeah.
It's a tax code. It's the government's money, but it's for our benefit if we actually are allowed to use it at that time. So
Wow.
just like there's so much around that. I mean, that's even a whole different training, but like really truly having something that's your own, you have control over is so important. Like, if you had, if I had an ex-boyfriend and we had an account together, I would want to make sure that I have all that money out of that account because I don't
Yeah.
know what he's going to do with it. Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't know what's going to happen there. And so making sure that you have control over your own money versus if the government decides to change their taxes, sorry, you're in that. You just have to accept it now. So
My God.
that's very scary once people realize that.
I mean, that is. I mean, yes. I mean, this scares the hell out of me. You know, they always say like, "What you don't know can't hurt you." I think what you don't know can hurt you. Just by that FBO comment there, like that is crazy. But wow. Okay. So, I mean, you've helped me better understand a 401k. And like I said, I know at the start you did like out of a scale of 1 to 10 how knowledgeable. And I know I used to be, closer to a 1. Now I'm probably sitting at that 8 or 9 because I've taken a lot of years of education and a lot of money lost. But I'm hoping for the people that
A
will
hard
eventually
lesson.
watch this, they're going to be able to move at least from like a 1 or 2 into maybe a 5 or a 6, and
Mm-hmm.
understand that maybe just because everybody else is doing it, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Right.
That's I'm
Well, if
hoping.
everyone else was doing it, everyone would be millionaires. I don't know anybody. I've been doing this for over a decade. I don't know anybody who's retired comfortably from their 401k. I
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, I can tell you, I lost 40% on my 401k just 2 years ago. So
Ugh,
I
ugh.
wish I wasn't in that. But
Yeah.
wow. All right. So, Brianna, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Honestly, I mean, right now, my biggest thing, I'm on TikTok right now. You can go follow me at Brianna Z Finance. That's probably the best way to get a hold of
Sweet.
me. We do a lot of things like this on a much smaller scale, shorter, going through exactly how things work. But there's links on there to be able to get in touch with me. If you want to jump on a meeting, we can absolutely go through and see what you're doing now, where
Yeah.
your financial, where you want to be in the future, and see how we can get there. Honestly, faster than you probably could, because there's some ways that we can find some extra money, make sure your money is actually doing what you want it to be doing. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. Well, very cool. I like it. And hey, thank you so much for this. This is incredibly helpful, and I really do appreciate it. So, thank you,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yes, and
And I'm
thank
sure
you,
we'll be in
Dan. This
touch.
has been great. This has been great.
All right. Well, hey, take care. Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.